This situation, by its current trajectory, will generate months of political and legal controversy. That is what is going to happen. And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do, because I work for you. And doing the right thing is doing the right thing for you.
Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. It was an extraordinary and surprising turn of events today as embattled New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced he was resigning and will be stepping down in 2 weeks. The stunning announcement came exactly 1 week after the release of a scathing investigation by New York Attorney General Letitia James, which found the governor sexually harassed 11 women while in office. Though the three-term governor continued to deny the allegations, he said today he was resigning in order to avoid having multiple investigations and an impending impeachment distract state officials from governing. However, it's still unclear whether Cuomo will continue to face an impeachment process before or even after his resignation takes effect. Cuomo's resignation represents a remarkable turn for just a year ago when the governor was seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party and possible presidential candidate. But losing Cuomo will lead to a historic change for the state. New York will get its first ever female governor when Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul takes the helm on August 24th. And the people will also, rumored to be potential contenders in the next gubernatorial race, include a handful of people of color, like New York Attorney General Tish James, House Democratic Caucus Chair Hakeem Jeffries, Congresswoman AOC, and New York City Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. Joining me now to discuss is New York State Senator James Sanders and that very same Jumaane Williams. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, gentlemen. First, Senator, what do you make of Cuomo's resignation today?
Well, it's good to be on your show, and it's good to see your other guests. Today's resignation represents a governor who was committing political harry-carry. He knew he had no other moves to make, and instead of being taken out by anyone, he decided to take himself out. The only move that he could make, one of the few things I agree with the governor on is that this was the best move for the people of New York State.
So, Jumaane, what happens now? Is it, the governor says he was resigning so that there would not be investigations tying up the legislators in Albany. But is that train already left the station? Is this going to continue to barrel forward even if he resigns?
I hope it's barreling forward with top speed. I mean, there's a few reasons why it should. One is these folks need to have their voices heard until conclusion. There is more than one thing that the Assembly is looking at, not just the sexual harassment cases, but the book deal where city resources were used with employees. And we're also looking at the nursing home scandal where he lied about people who were dying while he was writing that book on leadership. All those things need to be heard, and justice should be applied here, and the people who had the courage of coming forth should see this thing go to its fruition, as well as we want to make sure that he doesn't have the ability to run again, and I believe that only happens if the impeachment goes to conclusion.
Senator, New York State got its first ever black governor in the wake of another scandal. It will now get its first ever female governor in the wake of this scandal. When we look forward to, the actual race election, the next election, what do we expect to see? What does that field look like to replace this governor?
Well, all eyes will be on the Empire State because we are in for a rocking time politically. We have a full bench. We have so many talented people, including your guest and my friend Jumaane Williams. So many talented people who could fill that seat and lead the Empire State. And under those conditions, uh, stay tuned because everybody is going to get into the water. I'm announcing now, I am not running for governor. I'm probably the only one who is not running for governor.
Because I was going to ask you. But Jumaane, I'm going to ask you that question. Do you have any plans to run for governor of New York State?
I've said it's always an honor to have your name out there. The similar things were said when we were coming up to the mayoral race. What I will say now is I think there's a time to have those conversations. It's coming really soon. But as you mentioned, there's a historic thing that's about to happen, something that just happened. We're going to have the first woman governor. I ran for lieutenant governor 3 years ago on the issues that we're speaking about, who this Governor Cuomo is, and those things still stand. But right now, and I know the senator will agree, there are so many things going on in this state. We want to make sure we right the ship. So we all should be getting behind the governor that's coming in, because at least for a year she's going to be governor, and her success is the state's success.
So, Senator, what does this change in leadership mean for the citizens of New York? And I specifically am interested in what do you think that it means for black people in the state of New York to have this disruption. You know, black people stood by Cuomo for quite a while after the allegations first came to light. We haven't seen a lot of polling since the investigation was made public. But for a while, black people were behind him. What does this change in leadership mean for those people?
Well, I think that it gives them the chance to have a Juneteenth moment. They may have left the plantation late. They may be slow to understand what Governor Cuomo, his inactions and other steps were doing to our community. But I'm hoping that they too can right themselves and understand that we were dealing in a relational fashion to somebody who was transactional. And when the transaction was over, so were you. We received precious little of this Cuomo magic that we've been promised. So now we have a chance to perhaps sheepishly wake up and smell the coffee and hold a mature way of looking at the incoming governor, acting for a year, but governor nonetheless. The first woman, what a great movement forward in a state that hasn't even backed the ERA. We don't even have an ERA in Equal Rights Amendment in New York State. We haven't even voted for that. Maybe under her it will. But black people need to wake up and look at this in a sensible fashion and understand our interests and act in a mature way.
Jumaane, this governor will take the helm at a very precarious time. COVID is surging again all over the country, including in New York, not to the same degree as in other places, but including in New York. There is rising violent crime in our cities, including in the state of New York. People are still having a hard time getting back into the job market and matching their skills and their desires with the jobs that are available. And New York City is built, a lot of it is built around hospitality and travel, and that has been gravely impacted by COVID. How do you think this governor will respond to these issues that disproportionately affect black people?
First, I want to co-sign everything that the state senator said. That's why we hang out together. He spoke the truth. And my hope is that there's a lesson here for many of these black leaders and leaders in general. Cuomo couldn't be who he was if there wasn't an infrastructure of enablers, defenders, and people who were silent. And I'm hoping that lesson is taught and we don't have to learn it again. Hopefully that happens. But all the things that you mentioned are the
Wait,
reason
Jumaane,
why.
are you calling the black leaders who stood up for Cuomo after the allegations first became public enablers?
What I'm saying is that for the past over a decade, we're doing a lot of focus on this, which we should, because it was horrific. The work environment, the toxic work environment that we saw in the report. But for the past decade, this governor has been who he has been. And so what I'm saying is there were enablers, there were defenders, there were people who were silent. And we failed those, not just those 11 women, but black New Yorkers and New Yorkers in general, by not using the power that we had to be courageous and stand up and say this governor is not good for us. Say it loudly and say it clearly, because the infrastructure of fear and retribution was allowed to lead the way. And as was stated, we didn't get much for it. And sometimes we confuse getting a benefit for ourselves as getting a benefit for people. And we are where we are because of that. And we should try to dismantle that system that is there. And as you mentioned, there's a whole host of issues that we should be caring about right now. That the governor, as much as people thought that he was doing a good job, just was not. We became the epicenter of the epicenter when it came to COVID. People died who didn't have to because of his inaction or wrong action. And I'm hoping that the governor coming in now will at least provide leadership when we see the Delta variant increasing. We need a mask mandate. We need that to be done yesterday. The gun violence problem, finally the governor started speaking about that in earnest maybe a couple of weeks ago. That's someplace that we have to pick up. The rental assistance, billions of dollars are sitting as people are about to be evicted because Cuomo has not done anything to put that program in place. So and that just doesn't help tenants. It helps many small homeowners. Many of them are black, brown, and immigrant who could use that assistance so they too don't become homeless or lose their home. And those are the things that I'm hoping we can work with the new governor to get done immediately, because we're so far behind.
Jumaane Williams and James Sanders, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I really appreciate it. Bishop William Barber joins us to discuss what Joe Biden's infrastructure victory will mean for you. That's next. You're watching Prime on BNC.